welcome back to another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2. And believe it or not, this is coming at you with episode number 44. Now, if my guest looks and or sounds a little familiar, you might recognize him from, he's actually one of my top 10 downloads of my Wealth and Freedom Nexus podcast. That was back on episode 40. So with that, Chris Miles, welcome back to the show.
Apparently I'm all in the 40s. I'm 45 years old. I'm episode 44. Was episode 40 on the other show? Like, it must be telling me something.
Okay, we're gonna hit stop now. We're gonna come back on episode 60. Is that better?
There you go.
So, well, Chris, you and I talked a little bit off camera, and everyone has a unique story to share of how they went from that safe and secure W-2 job to, embracing entrepreneurship. And yours was kind of maybe a two-step plan versus just a leaving W-2. Do you want to maybe take us back of how that journey went?
Yeah, so I was the first kid in my family to actually go to college,
Okay.
right? So my family had high hopes for me. And the thing is, my family, they didn't know much about money. They didn't know much about anything beyond you should just go to school, get a good job,
Yep.
and then your life should be better, right? And especially where my dad didn't go to college, but he worked hard. He taught me some good values. Well, I went to college and I realized pretty quickly after seeing professors that I didn't want to be just a W-2 guy. So
Mm,
my intention was to become a business consultant.
okay.
But right before I got my bachelor's, I said, well, if I'm going to be a business consultant, shouldn't I have real life business experience before I just go and get an MBA and have all this book smarts, but no real life experience?
Yep.
So I dropped out of college with just one class to go before I got my bachelor's. Just took a
Wow.
sabbatical, supposed to be temporary,
Sure.
and I said, all right, what am I going to do? At the time I still had a full time W-2 job, but I was just trying to find something. And then finally, the the opportunity came up to become a full, like really become a commission only financial advisor, right?
Okay.
And that was the first business that I did, and it was tough. Like, I didn't know how to be a business owner. I didn't know how to not just work a job, because that's what I'd done since I was really like 15 years old. I'd
Sure.
always worked, a normal hourly wage type job. So, anyways, I started doing that, and eventually, it got to the point where I said I should probably quit. This is about 20 years ago, and I said, I got enough business lined up in my business, I should quit now. And I had a W-2 job up to that point for about 5 years.
Okay.
Um, but I did quit, but it didn't quite work out everything I expected it to,
Mm,
which we can obviously talk about that story as we go along this interview.
sure. No, it makes sense. Yeah. So with excuse me, uh, you kind of mentioned going back to college, but was there maybe how would I put it, like one pivotal moment that sticks in your head that you just think back at this moment or this series of events, maybe realize, yep, doing that W-2 job from getting out of college to 62, 65 when I retired just isn't the path for me.
Yeah, it I kind of felt it both while I was working my job and
Okay.
also while I was in college, right? Because, I like the idea that I could have control of my own time and my own destiny. So doing a job forever was kind of like torture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to think that someone had to tell me what to do, and understand, like, the job that I had for 5 years before I quit and was trying to go full time as a business owner, the job that I had was a customer service job, on the phones. So I
Mm,
wasn't doing outbound; it was all inbound phone calls coming in. I was doing a lot of customer service, and I was
okay.
really good at it. Like, I was really good at helping people, serving them, and that kind of thing. So I moved up the ranks, but I got to a position inside that department where I could not get any more raises. I could not
Ah,
get any more skills, because with every skill they give you a little tiny raise.
yeah.
Well, I tapped out.
Yeah.
And by the end there, after 5 years, I was like, I don't even want to be on the phone anymore. I hate the fact that they literally put us on 6 minute bathroom breaks a day for a full-time job. Now, you still
Oh,
got the two
geez.
15-minute breaks and then the half-hour lunch, or maybe it's an hour lunch, whatever it was, right? You still
Okay.
got that. But they're like, no, like, you can't just take a break and go on do the bathroom for more than 6 minutes. And I'm like, well, geez, better hope I'm drinking my prune juice to
Yeah.
make this go faster, right?
And there's plenty
Um,
of toilet paper stocked. We don't need to make a trip to the janitor's closet or anything. So,
yeah, I mean, they're monitoring you. They're like babysitting you essentially, and that wasn't what I did. And I tried to change departments, but I remember there was one manager that just said after he interviewed me for a supervisor type of role, he said, Chris, I just have the feeling you have something else to do. Like, I just feel like you have something more to do and this isn't it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I just about have my bachelor's. I could either go into human resources. I could go into, management. I could do all kinds of things with the experience I'm getting. And they're like, nah, no, it's not for you. And they put somebody else in the position. So I got passed
Okay.
up. Made me so mad because I was literally working at $11.69 an hour. I was tapped out other than annual raises, which,
Wow.
they're not going to give me more than 3% a year.
Yeah.
I was never going to be able to become financially set working that kind of trajectory.
Okay. Wow. And granted, I know this was, 20 years ago, but still under $12 is under $12. It's,
Yeah,
not a high paying job by any stretch of the imagination. So,
not at all.
right. So, you had mentioned going on this entrepreneurial journey. What were like the steps you took to get to the point of like, okay, they passed me up. I want to be more entrepreneurial. What were like the, stepping stones that you took to get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I had to start from scratch, right? I mean, pretty much like when you go into financial advising, I mean, it's not like, you just have clients fall in your lap, especially when you're a 20 something year old kid, just, in college or in my case, dropped out of college, with almost my bachelor's. And so it was interesting because of course you're just going through the people,
Mhm.
family, friends. A lot of times I work with people that were just like me that were, young newlyweds, maybe just starting a family, so it wasn't like they had a ton of money. And so I was just having to slowly build my book of business over the years. And it was about, I think it was 2 years in that I finally just said, okay, I have enough, business lined up that if all of it closes, I'll make just about as much in that next month or two as I'll make in a year working this job at 30 hours a week. So I backed off
Wow.
my main job from 40 hours to 30 hours, just enough to get the benefits.
Oh,
And then
yep.
the rest of the time, I was working all my overtime hours, so to speak, working as a financial advisor, right? So I was sometimes would be working at 8 a.m. And then ending, and going, getting off at 3 o'clock or whatever it was, and then next thing I know, I'm jumping on over to being a financial advisor till sometimes well into the evening hours.
Wow.
So I was really hustling it, doing that as a side hustle. And
Hmm.
when it got to the point where I said, listen, I'm making maybe $1,300 a month, after tax and everything, as a, in this 30-hour a week job. What can I do? And I had about $20,000 of business lined up. I said, that's about what I make in a year.
Wow.
So that's where I said, I'm going to make the leap. I'm going to do it. And I then, put in my notice, said, guys, I'm leaving. I'm going full time in my business. And they said, well, that's great. We'll throw you a party. And, they threw me a little going away party. They retired my extension number. They just like, they retire basketball jerseys.
Oh,
They
wow.
retired my extension
I've never
number.
heard of that
Uh,
before.
no, it was weird.
Wow.
They even took a shirt, a company shirt, wrote my extension number and gave it to me. I'm like, oh, thanks. I'm going to give that away to donations.
Yeah.
But no watch, no gold watch or anything. Like, I mean, that's all he gave me really was that and a little party.
Wow. Okay. I've heard of some maybe insulting gifts or go away gifts, but that might be a new one I've just heard of. So, from start to finish, Chris, just kind of looking back, how long did it take you from, starting your at the time a side hustle to making it a full business? And do you remember when your freedom day was when you left the W-2 workforce entirely?
Yeah, it's so it was about, like I said, 2.5 years
Okay.
of working the side hustle. Now, granted, if I know what I know now versus what I knew then, of course, right? Looking
Yeah.
back, I probably could have quit much faster.
Yeah.
But I was someone who was trained in this W-2 mentality, trying to learn how to become a business owner. That had a learning curve to it.
Hmm.
And even after that 2.5 years, yeah, and I was free. I remember that first week, I was so happy. I was on cloud nine because I could now work in the middle of the day. I could do whatever I want, be home and that kind of thing, right? I had my freedom.
Yeah.
Um, and then reality set in because I realized, wait a minute, all the pressure's on me. My wife just had a baby 6 months prior. So she was at home with the kid. She wasn't earning any money like we were when we were newlyweds.
Hmm.
And and then I realized that I don't have a base income. I have only commissions coming in.
Yeah.
And that scared me so much to the point that I actually went to the scarcity mode And when people would meet with me, they didn't know why. They just said, I just don't feel right about it anymore.
Mm.
So all that business I had lined up, $20,000 of business, people started saying, I just don't feel right about it anymore. I don't know why. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why not? Like, you should be doing this, because
Yeah.
you're going to pay my paycheck. That's what I was really thinking in the back of my head.
Yeah.
And that comes through, when you're
Hmm.
trying to quit your W-2 and you're trying to do a side hustle or a business, if you're desperate for money, that comes through in your
Yeah.
words, your actions, but most importantly, it just comes through subconsciously. Like, people don't know why. They don't know why they sense it, but they just sense that there's something not right. Something's off. And as a
Hmm.
result, they lose trust and they don't do business with you. That's
Right.
what happened to me. What should have been $20,000 of business ended up being like 3,000 of business that
Ouch.
closed. So only a few months later, I was going back looking for a W-2 job about 3 months later.
Wow.
And it was miserable. In fact, I knew this is when I hit a low point. It was so I quit in September of
Okay.
that year. At Thanksgiving time, just after Thanksgiving, I was flat broke, had nothing in my account anymore. I was pretty much overdrawn. I
Wow.
was done. And I was like, well, okay. And I wanted to give a donation at church, right?
Hmm.
I was like, I got to give something. And so I thought, you hear people always say you can make money while you sleep. Well, I took that literally. I said, I'm going to set my alarm at midnight. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go outside because I know where there's money. And the money is at the drive through windows, right? When people are trying to hand their change or somebody's getting change back, they drop it and it goes under their car or whatever. And they're just like, I won't worry about it, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever happens. I had that brilliant idea. I'm going to drive to every drive through window. So I did within about a 10 mile total distance, about 5 mile radius. I went to every fast food place, every bank, that I could go to where I knew
Yeah.
there was changing hands. I was pretty happy because there was a sandwich place I found a whopping 75 cents. That was pretty interesting. Wendy's, I did find out they were open till 2 a.m. That was very nerve wracking because I, parked the car and then I ducked underneath the drive through window so the person wouldn't see me so I could pick it out. And get it, this 25 degrees cold outside. My fingers, like the skin on your fingernails are tearing. So it's like stinging because like, you're pulling up from your fingernails, trying to dig into the tar and stuff.
Oh, wow.
I came home at 3 a.m., counted my change. I had $4. I felt like Napoleon Dynamite screaming, that's like $1 an hour. Gosh, because it really was. I realized I would have made more money being in that drive-through window working at minimum wage than I would have been spending 3 hours in the cold, sneaking, looking like a creepo, trying to pick up change. That's when I realized I needed to get a job again. So I went and got another W-2 job. This time it was Smile and Dial. So this time it was outbound sales because I knew I could have better control of income. I wanted to get more per
Hmm.
hour than what I was getting paid. Most of the inbound was paying you like, 7, 8, maybe $9 an hour, but I was
Sure.
making over 11 before. So I did outbound sales. Got a job actually for ancestry.com, if you know them, like they're like
Oh,
a
yeah, okay.
genealogy website, right?
Sure.
So I went and worked for them, upselling people that were already members. They already had membership. I was just going to try to renew them for another year and even upsell them other programs and
Mm.
help them do their genealogy research and stuff. So I was actually really good at helping people get past roadblocks and upselling. The problem is you're paid on a curve, just like in college, right? When you're graded on a curve,
Sure.
you're paid on a curve. The highest paid salespeople, they would get in the upper echelons of over 20 some odd dollars an hour. The lower echelons would get the minimum base wage of $9 an hour. So they would say if you're average, you get about $13 an hour. I
Okay.
barely ever hit $13 an hour because I spend so much time serving and helping people. The people that
Mm.
had it figured out, the guys are like, listen, I'm just calling. If you're not going to buy, I don't care. Click, just click. Like they would just try to, get whatever quick little sales they could and boom, there's your
Sure.
number, boom, done. And that was it. Right. They weren't trying to like help anybody necessarily. So I was
Wow.
the number one, person that got the reward for the helping people out. They call it, PILF, horrible acronym, people I'm looking for, PILF.
Yeah, well, we'll
Um,
just leave it at that. And
We'll just leave it at that, right? I don't know why they did that. That's what
wow.
it's a Utah company. I had no clue what they're doing. But yeah, so people I'm looking for, I was number one guy at doing that, but I was usually averaging about 11, $12 an hour. So, and even worse, during that period of time, my car got repoed. I
Oh,
didn't know it because
geez.
I only had a carport. I woke up and and again, this is a 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. job that I had, right? So I would do this from, actually, no, I take that back, 7 to 3. It was 7 to 3,
Okay.
full time, 40 hours a week. And then from 3 onward, I would be the financial advisor. Well, I did that so I'd have more time. Well, 7 a.m., of course, I get out of the house at 6:30 to go to
Hmm.
work, and my car's missing. I thought it was stolen. And then I realized, oh no, Chris, you were more than a month late on your payments. So I had to borrow a neighbor's car. It was like an old laser from the 80s, if you remember those things. The ceiling was coming down. I had to take pins from work, push it up so that the thing would stop hitting me on the head because I thought it was like a spider in my hair all the time I was driving.
Wow.
Um, and the thing was barely working, but my neighbor got it running just enough. And until I had enough money to finally get that car out of repossession, which, took me a month or so to do. Just
Wow.
horrible. I mean, in fact, it was so bad that when I would go to bed late at night, and I would be exhausted because I was really working at least 80 hours a week, right? Between the two, at least 60 to 80 hours. Well, I would go to bed and I would have nightmares about that job, that W-2 job. I would have nightmares having to call people and having to sell them. And then I'd wake up relieved that was just a dream, only to realize that was my alarm going off to
Yep.
go to that nightmare.
Wow.
It was so horrible. So I mean, I was literally there for about 3-4 months, and then finally, I started getting opportunities where I was able to do some other side hustle stuff along with the financial advising, like doing stock coaching. I
Oh,
had
sure.
somebody in my neighborhood that had a connection there. He says, "Hey, I know you're not a huge stock trader, but I know you have coaching experience. Let's get you there." So he got me in more of this independent contractor role, which was
Mm.
more free to use my time however I want. So it's more like being a business owner, but they were feeding me the stuff. And here's what's amazing. When I really started to have that stability of income, my business side, my income as a financial advisor also went up.
Mm.
So what was fascinating is when I stopped worrying about the money, I started making more money in my business. So if I were to do it all over again, right? And if I'm giving advice for anybody who wants to screw their W-2 and get out of it, one is actually have a savings fund,
Hmm.
which I didn't have. I didn't have an emergency savings fund to launch and
Sure.
adjust. I was really paycheck to paycheck and went to paycheck to paycheck in the wrong environment. A business is not a good place to be paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
I should have built up more savings before I made the leap, but I was just so excited. I was ready. It was done that
Hmm.
I just couldn't wait. And that impatience really is what hurt me. And then secondly is realize that you can control your emotions, not being in that scarcity thing. If you know
Hmm.
you can go into your business and know that you don't need that one client or that one customer,
Yep.
that you've got that safety net, or maybe you've got some other streams of income coming in, be grateful for it. That's the very thing
Hmm.
that's allowing your business to grow and build on the side. So I would definitely tell you that, I mean, although I know some people have hustled and done it where they needed to make money, that
Hmm.
didn't work for me. That didn't
Yeah.
work for me at all. I had to go back to having a side, I was going to call it a side hustle, a side job, right? Really having
Yep.
that W-2 job to help stabilize things. Even as an independent contractor, even though I wasn't W-2, I was 1099, still having
Mhm.
that stability of income helped so much to the point where eventually I was able to figure out about scarcity and abundance and controlling those emotions so that you can actually do better business.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with all that. With that, and no, Chrissy obviously had to uh go back to the job that you had nightmares about. But once everything was said and done, you had your savings, you had your business going. Do you remember exactly what your date was when you had the final screw the W-2 moment?
I think it was around April of 2005 is when
Okay.
it was. I don't remember the exact day.
Okay.
Um, because once I got that consulting work, or not consulting work, but that independent contractor work for
Sure.
that stock coaching company, um, I started going to that. I actually didn't show up for the last week of my job. I kept calling in sick, and then eventually, I went in, and they said, "Hey, Chris, we got to talk to you about your absences here." I said, "Yeah, I quit." And they're like, "All right,
Oh,
that's
well,
good.
I guess we won't have to talk about that.
We don't have to
Bye.
talk." I'm like, "No, I'm done." But I did express gratitude. I was like, "I really thank you because this came to me at a very hard time in my life." In fact, my wife actually went and worked at that same company doing inbound calls.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it was really interesting because we had to switch off, trading of the guard, and there was about an hour or so that we overlapped on our time. So she was working nights to help us out of the situation too. I mean, talk about
Interesting.
feeling like crap as a provider of a husband and a father, right?
Yeah.
Like, my wife had to go back. She was crying all the time because she missed the first steps of her oldest son, and
Oh, wow.
those kind of things. And So, I mean, that's why, I had to be patient. I knew that independent contractor work was coming because the
Hmm.
guy was telling me about it for a few months. And I just kept following up and I just kept trying to do whatever I could to stay positive, even though I was living in a nightmare. Right.
Wow. Wow, that's quite the story there. So, well, you've kind of answered this already, and I know, well, you probably don't miss having the nightmares anymore. But on a positive note, from the W-2 lifestyle, have since it's been or nearing up 2 decades, any regrets from leaving that behind, or anything you do miss from the W-2 lifestyle?
There was, I remember, when I launched, one of my businesses, right? And it was
Hmm.
brand new. And of course, that startup phase is a lot of work and effort and little payoff immediately, right? And when you're a CEO of your own company too, the thing is you have to think about all the different departments, and,
Hmm.
unless you're hiring everybody off the bat, which usually you don't do, but you got to think about, marketing and sales. You got to think about, your own, really like doing your own, product creation or content creation, depending on
Hmm.
what kind of business you're in, right? When you got to fill all the departments that a normal company would have, you're
Yeah.
filling that.
Hmm.
You're your own CFO. You're doing your own finances. You're doing your own operations. You're doing everything.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, man, I wish being a brainless employee, right? And I don't mean that you're brainless if you're an
Yeah.
employee, but if you can just think about your job and your role, just be that
Hmm.
focused, especially as a man, where men are very good at being focused. We're not good at being, pulled in different directions. That's why it's
Right.
hard being a husband, father, as well as an employee, right? It was so nice. I'd be like, if I could just think about one role, that would be amazing. So there are things, and I don't believe everybody should be a business owner. I really think that
Hmm.
there are people that are meant to be intrapreneurs
Yeah.
versus entrepreneurs, right?
Okay.
They create their own position. They still own their position. They own the
Hmm.
role inside of a business, but they're not the one running the business. This could
Okay.
also mean if you do have your own business, maybe you're in a partnership. Maybe you have a partner that is more that entrepreneurial person. Maybe they're the person that's outgoing and they're willing to go out and hustle and make it happen, where you might be better on the back scenes, right? Maybe
Hmm.
you're more of a back end person. Maybe you're not the people person, right? Maybe you're the person that does do the operations and you need a partner to be the face while you're the one that actually is the one keeping things clean and tidy at home, so to speak, inside the business, right?
Right.
I mean, there are multiple ways to do this that you can become your own version of an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. So I just think that whatever you do, whether you decide to quit the W-2 or you decide to even stay in the W-2, become an entrepreneur of that position, own that position, make the best of it. And when you do that, when you really focus on creating value for your employer or creating value for your customer, whomever you're working for, right? It's the principles are always the same. Dollars follow value. Focus on providing as much value as you can for the people you work for, and then the money will follow.
Oh, dollars follow value. I might have to remember that quote. I like that one there. So,
Yeah.
on the flip side of that, Chris, as we're approaching year 18, we've done this journey, built these businesses. If you had to pick like one overlapping, like the overall best thing from this journey that you've had for the last, 18, 19 years, what would that be that comes to mind?
I would say probably the best things I've learned is like I mentioned about abundance versus scarcity, right?
Mhm.
Your mindset really has everything to do with it. It's much more of a mindset game than just a skill set game. It's amazing what you can overcome with the right mindset, and I don't just mean being positive. I mean that's part of it, right? Having an attitude of gratitude, but like for example, when I finally really when things started to really click for me in business, it's when I realized that, like I said, where you don't need that business, right? It's so interesting how when you need money, when you're desperate for money, that's when nobody wants to do business with you.
Yeah.
So when you're not desperate for money or when you're focused on serving them and you really are focused on that instead of your own self-interest, it's amazing how you'll get what you want. And that's kind of become my mantra is when you focus on giving others what they want, that's when
Hmm.
you get what you want.
Yeah.
And if you really truly focus on that and you are patient, and I remember somebody asked me on an entrepreneur show once, he said, Chris, say I give you 1 week, $500, and I drop you and you have to start from scratch. What would you do? I said, I would go find, whatever business I'm in, find about 10 people that I know are of influence in that market or whatever I'm looking at,
Mm-hmm.
take them out to breakfast or lunch, and focus purely on just what I can do to serve them. Not even trying to, advertise my business, but just say, hey, how can I get to know you? What can I do to help you in your professional or your personal life? Right. And just show up as a true friend to those people. And what's amazing is that it works every time. I mean, even when I launched Money Ripples, I actually broke off from a previous company that I had launched that made millions,
Mm-hmm.
quit that one, started over with a 2-year non-compete, and I
Wow.
started a new business. And that's pretty much what I did. I didn't have a ton of startup money because I was digging out of a financial hole after the last recession.
Mm-hmm.
But I did focus on, I was going targeting women entrepreneurs, specifically was the market. I only focused on that market because I knew that that guy wouldn't compete with that market. Even though I was with a lot of chiropractors and dentists in the past, I knew he didn't like women entrepreneurs, specifically in the state of Utah. So
Interesting.
I got in some of those women entrepreneur circles, and I went to like some of those events, and then I got to know some of those people there, and the people that were the influencers. I would invite them to lunch, and of course they were skeptical. They're like, "Why?" I'm like, "I just want to get to know you and understand what you do."
Mm-hmm.
And it was legitimate. Like I wasn't just trying to do a bait and switch on them. I was legitimately trying to do that. And when they realized the sincerity of it, then they said, "Well, what do you do? Like, how can I help you?"
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if you can help me, but um, hey, if you know anybody that needs this, it needs my
Right.
business. My case was I teach about money principles and such. If you need anybody that needs help with that, let me know. And eventually, as the months went on, I started getting referred to doing speaking engagements and trainings and things like that. And my business started taking off. I hit 6 figures in the first year. So
Wow.
so that's the key, is that it's sometimes counterintuitive to what you think would work, especially if you are a W-2 employee. But if
Mm-hmm.
you can become a student of becoming an entrepreneur, really a student of that scarcity and abundance. I know 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about that a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Those kind of books and those self-development things, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, those kind of things really do help you break free from the traditional mold.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. With that, Chris, too, and for any listeners out there, maybe they feel in your similar position like you were all those years ago, but pick the reason they feel stuck at their job. They can't leave. I have the healthcare plan, my gotta provide for my family, whatever the case may be. What's maybe
Mhm.
like the one piece of advice that you would give them to maybe encourage them to take the leap toward entrepreneurship, or just seeking change?
Yeah, I mean, I would first off just follow what feels right in your heart and your gut, right? And just go with that. I mean, if you feel a call to something, follow it. Have the faith to follow it. The best thing to do is seek, it's always, you can always try to do it on your own, and that's fine. Like if you're watching these videos, this is awesome. Like educate yourself, use your down hours or your workout hours or whatever it is to learn from this stuff, just like you're watching this show right now. Learn from this. Find mentors, and if you can't afford a mentor, keep doing this, keep
Yep.
getting books, podcasts. There's so much free content out there that can give you
Exactly.
wisdom, to learn from people that have been there and done that, like you are, like you're trying to do. So find those people that have already done what you're wanting to do, and have them as mentors.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, as we close this out, Chris, and I want to thank you for taking the time to, share your very interesting story with my listeners, from picking up pennies at drive-throughs to everything in between. But I call this the unscrewed moment as we get into 2023. Are there any new projects or books, seminars, etc., that you're working on or want to share with my listeners?
New stuff. I mean, we are always working on new stuff, I guess you could say. I mean, we even got like commercials about to come out on Fox News and
Oh,
PBS and
wow.
things like that. I mean, I don't know if that's something they will find because it's going to be on live TV, and
Gotcha.
I haven't watched live TV for a decade, but
Yeah.
but it's kind of cool, But for us, like the main things we've been working on, we do have like a new program called Cashflow Secrets,
Okay.
which does help if somebody's trying to find more cash, especially trying to find more capital to create startup. We do have a Cashflow Secrets course that's on our website, moneyripples.com, that we've been working on. Um, as a free resource, I would say this, and this is not new, this is actually old, but if you are trying to learn how to become more of an entrepreneur, my earliest podcasts on the Money Ripples podcast, the earliest ones, the ones starting from episode number one. I'm about
Wow.
episode number 700 now, but episode
Wow.
number one, those earlier ones, I talked a lot more to people that are entrepreneurs or even entrepreneurs that wanted to become entrepreneurs. And if you go back to that, the only place you could probably find those, because iTunes only goes back 300 episodes.
Right. I've
The only
noticed
place you
that
could
too.
find those is blogtalkradio.com
Okay.
/ money ripples. If you do that, blogtalkradio.com / money ripples, you can go back to the very first episodes. I would say the first 50 to 100 focus a
Interesting.
lot. I mean, they're money focused too, but there's a lot of them focused on entrepreneurship.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And I'm going to write that down because, yeah, I've come across that with, oh, they must have stopped at or started at episode 255, but iTunes only goes back so far. So,
Yeah,
Chris,
it's horrible.
yeah. Chris, greatly appreciate your time again. Appreciate you educating my listeners and keep doing what you're doing with the Money Ripples community.
Appreciate it. Thanks.